Welcome to Swiftuality, where we meet at the intersection of Taylor Swift and spirituality.
We're your hosts. I'm Megan.
And I'm Hannah.
Welcome back to the second part of our Coming of Age series. And actually, our Coming of Age series was originally supposed to be a Coming of Age episode, but we keep finding more things to talk about because Taylor writes about such a wide variety of topics, and she's obviously grown since, she was 11 or 12 when she first started writing the songs we have recorded today.
Right, so at first we thought that we could make one episode of all the ways she's grown, but obviously we just keep finding more and more themes, so now it's become a series, as we know of. Mm-hmm. Our original idea for this episode was going to be love and relationships, but then we realized that there are so many kinds of love and relationships. So then we narrowed that down to romantic love and relationship, which we still find that there's too many different aspects of it that we could talk about.
Yes, she obviously talks a good bit about love and romantic relationships in her writing. So for this episode, since we are called Swiftuality, we found ourselves very drawn to kind of what can be considered as spiritual elements of romantic love.
Yeah, we're very curious about the ideas of fate, soulmates, and destiny in particular. Taylor's music referenced those ideas often, which got us thinking about how we viewed love and relationships growing up and how Taylor saw it and how that view shifts and changes as we grow older. So, yeah, let's start it off. Megan, did you believe in soulmates growing up?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think so. I think when I was younger, my concept of this was certainly tied strongly to theology. I was surrounded by I kind of even want to say the idea of soulmates was looked down upon because it wasn't like a biblical concept.
Ooh, yeah.
So I think I saw it more of like God has perfectly created someone to be your future spouse and eventually you'll find them somewhere out in the world.
Yeah.
But then as I grew older, I kind of shifted to thinking there isn't necessarily just one person that's perfect for each person. You could be a good fit with a few different people for different reasons.
Yeah. No, I also remember thinking or believing that the idea of soulmate is like unchristian too. But I think I hoped for that in some ways. I think it's kind of a relief to think that there's someone who'll just love you for who you are without having to change anything. But I'm also influenced heavily by the Buddhist belief of how reincarnation affects who you end up with. Where there's a person out there who's lived lifetimes with you and you'd hope to be reunited with them in the next lifetime. So I think I like that idea that I'm a part of or like an extension of something beyond myself. So I remember vividly just romanticizing about who I was in my past life and who I was with when I was younger.
Oh my gosh.
I spent a lot of time doing that.
I love that so much. Okay, so we found quite a few terms throughout Taylor's discography that we kind of feel relate to the spiritual conception of love. The big one being soulmates or twin flame, which she references, of course, in All Too Well, the 10-minute version. Down Bad, she says, like I lost my twin. And then in a lot of other songs talks about this sense of confirmation through various signs that she's found the person she's supposed to be with.
Yeah, I immediately think of Invisible String and in the song Enchanted, when she said, your eyes whispered, have we met? Yes. Reminds me of this idea that like they've known each other in another life, right? And so as the song Lover, have I known you for 20 seconds or 20 years? Or in King of My Heart, and all at once you are the one I've been waiting for, body and soul, you know?
Oh, yes, okay. So let's just define some terms so we're all on the same page.
We had so much fun looking into definitions and myths behind these ideas. I know, Megan, that you looked into the Greeks' understanding of soulmates. Do you want to share with us?
Oh my gosh, yes. So the idea of soulmates is found in many different cultures, but most recognizably in the West, it's from the Greeks.
Right.
Plato actually talks about this myth that describes people as originally having 4 arms and 4 legs and 2 faces. So they're kind of like 2 people attached, if you can imagine that in your head.
Like conjoined twin.
Yes, we'll post a picture on Instagram, so go there if you need a visual. And then these like combined people tried to climb Mount Olympus at some point, and
Yeah.
Zeus thought that they were too powerful, so he split them in half, and then that's how people became people who they are today. So the like people were left to wander the earth in perpetual longing for their other half or their soulmate.
And do you know if that connects to the idea of like twin flames at all?
Yeah. So twin flames is kind of a concept that might have root in this myth as well, but Hinduism also has a
Ooh.
story about 2 souls joining to come to this spiritual completion.
Okay.
A twin flame kind of brings this idea in that you might have a sense that you've known someone in another life, going past just the physical attraction, kind of like 2 puzzle pieces fitting together.
Yes, and Taylor talks about puzzle pieces a few times, and we'll definitely revisit that.
Totally. So we've defined soulmates, twin flames. Let's also talk about fate and destiny, which she references a lot as well.
Yes, from my understanding of destiny in Thai Buddhism, which, it has a lot of Hindu influence, we're just kind of very synchronistic. There's a myth about how the Hindu god Brahma, who's also known as the creator, he visits every child on their 6th day after their birth and would write the entire destiny on their foreheads. So this includes like their occupations, like significant others, their enemies, and like just the events and ups and downs that they'll face in their life.
Uh-huh. So is destiny kind of like this laid out plan for your life? Like, do you know if anything changes, or is it kind of like these are set posts in your life and everything else just kind of swirls around those?
Yeah. So here's what I love about Buddhism, right? Everything is held so loosely. And I think specifically with Thai Buddhism, like I said, it's so synchronized. We just kind of pull from different religions, influences, and just have a repertoire of all the beliefs. So they kind of clashes. But I also know that Thai people also believe in karma. So that is taking destiny in their own hands and saying, I'm going to put out good karma, therefore it'll come back to me. So
Yeah, I should have known not to ask a direct question. Regardless, I feel like this fits really well into the ideas of fate and destiny, which go back all the way in time to like ancient Sumerians. And pretty much every belief system has wrestled with these ideas in some way.
yeah.
We kind of use fate and destiny interchangeably in our American vernacular, but there are a few distinctions. So, first, fate comes from the Fates in Greek mythology, again, the Greeks, who were 3 goddess sisters who made and maintained each person's life with a literal spool of golden string. One of the sisters would spin the thread, another measured it, and then the third one would cut it when it was your time to die.
Yeah, I'm thinking Hercules.
Yes, they do make an appearance in that movie. Also, Plato writes about the fates, saying they sang about what was, what is, and what will be, which kind of expands on the role of fate away from just life and death and makes it kind of more about events and occurrences in our lives.
Yeah, it is similar to destiny. I think the slight distinction is that destiny, I think in Latin means place that you are going. So it's not as set as fate, but it's definitely like a plan with the potential to be altered by human actions based on the choices that people make, which feels similar to karma to me. But yeah, drawing those concepts back to love, I am reminded of this Korean idea called inyon, which translates to providence or fate, and it's specifically used in a romantic context. You see how this concept play out so beautifully in the movie Past Lives by Celine Song. I think it came out in 2023, where she describes inyon as you are connected to each other in lives before this one, and also you'll be connected in the lives after this one. And in every lifetime, it's going to mean something different.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And it kind of makes me think, I think Taylor references this idea in the Speak Now Vault track Timeless, which talks very explicitly about this connection across lifetimes that people can have.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, I think super spiritual.
Right.
She talks about how even across lifetimes, she would recognize this person and be inexplicably drawn to them. And I feel like it's kind of in the same vein as love at first sight, or like meeting someone and feeling a deep familiarity with them, like a twin flame.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people understand that feeling as a sign that you're destined to be together. You know, you get certain feelings when you're supposed to be with someone.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've definitely had that feeling before. And I'm going to tell the story, but like I was convinced that I was destined to be with this boy for like 6 years of my life.
Oh my gosh, 6 years. Okay, go on. Keep going. Let's hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So I've definitely had this love at first sight experience with a neighborhood boy when I was 13.
Oh my
Little
gosh.
baby me. As I mentioned, the line from Enchanted, "Your eyes whispered, have we met?" That's literally the feeling that I felt
Wow.
when I first saw him. Yeah, so I mean, a little bit of a backstory. I grew up in Bangkok, which is a really big city, but my family moved to a really rural town, which I hated. But I remember the first week of moving there and first seeing this boy, it was just sparks flies. I never felt my nerves and my body feel just that reaction before. Like it just felt
Aw.
larger than life. I didn't know that I was capable of feeling these feelings. But yeah, like I just felt drawn in a way that I felt like I need to know him more. Like I need to get to the bottom of this because I felt like we have this connection. Yeah, it's just a weird feeling of wanting to rekindle something, but it's just crazy because obviously like we've never met.
Oh my gosh. This is reminding me too of my first crush. I remember the moment of falling for this person, and it was such an intense and powerful feeling that I still remember it to this day so clearly.
Yeah.
And I think these early stages of love really are like a spiritual experience
Yeah.
that shapes and defines how we understand ourselves. Like we find connection with someone outside of ourselves and we try to make sense of it, believing that it's fate or destiny or this person is our soulmate, because like those feelings are so strong.
Right. And like I said, it just feels huge. Like I just am always surprised by those feelings, like that I have the ability to feel this much and this big, right? So yeah, the connection I felt with that boy, I haven't felt with anyone ever since. It's so hard to explain, but there's this one time specifically we were playing Uno.
Oh my gosh.
But it's like we call it slap Uno, which is regular Uno, but you just pick a number. Let's say it's a 7, right? And when anyone puts down a 7, everyone has to like put their hands in the middle of the pile.
Okay.
And then whoever has their hand on top have to like draw 2, right? So we were playing that, and then his hand landed on top of mine.
Oh my gosh.
And he did a little like finger squeeze.
What?
And I have never felt the jolt. Like
What?
never felt anything like that ever since. I mean, I was 13 too. Maybe it just like was more intense, but it was like he did that and I looked up at him and he was already looking at me and I'm just like
Stop.
dead. Like
So it was like on purpose.
yes,
There's no, you can't.
100%. It was so, yeah, like someone wants to get your attention, just like a little squeeze.
Oh.
Yeah, I died dead. But then tragedy struck because so I've loved this boy since I was in 6th grade. So from 6th grade through 11th grade.
Oh my gosh.
And he will show interest in me with little ways like that he does. But he would only date my friends.
Stop.
So I was just like, I think I mentioned before that like teardrops on my guitar was like,
Yep.
it's because of this boy.
It's all coming into focus now. It's becoming clearer.
Yeah, so in 8th grade, my family finally moved to a different province. And I just knew, like, I'll probably never see this boy again. And I told myself, I'm going to forget him. I'm going to move on. And it was that year that my brother decided to sit me down and tell me, he's like, do you remember this boy? Do you know that he liked you? I told him that he's not allowed to ask you out because they're friends. They're like
No.
best
Oh
friends.
my gosh. What the heck?
Right. So then in my mind, it's just like, no, wait, we were meant to be. He wanted to be with me, but then my brother got in
No.
the way. And so that led me to fall back into that belief that we were destined to be together and kind of like kept my hopes out for that again. So fast forward a little bit, he ended up studying abroad my ninth grade year while I was in Thailand. And then the next year, I was offered the same scholarship to go to that school that he was at. And I told myself, if my visa goes through, if I actually make my way there, then it's destined. If I make it over there, like we were meant to be together. And I did. And I fully believe that this is meant to be. But then he would pull the same shit and would date other people. And
No.
yeah, so that's how that ends.
Oh my gosh. So you never dated?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that is so rude of him on so many levels. Like,
Right.
just date your friends. But wow, I totally get the reading into those signs and, confirmation bias. You're going to see what you want to see sometimes.
Yeah.
And this actually kind of leads perfectly into the first song I want to bring up as we start to trace Taylor's understanding of the spiritual elements of love. On her debut album, she has a song, A Perfectly Good Heart, where she's going through an early heartbreak and she says, "Maybe I should have seen the signs, should have read the writing on the wall." And to me, it's an example of being young. And of course, when you're young, you think, or at least you hope, that whoever you're interested in is your soulmate. But she's kind of on the other side of the relationship now, or the crush, and she sees the negative signs only in hindsight, which she's like, oh, like that could have prevented this pain that I'm in if only she realized this person wasn't for her.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to being naive and convinced by the signs. The song You Belong With Me was literally the constant for me through those years that I was crushing on this boy. So just believing that he's with the wrong person and he's supposed to be with me. But I mean, I literally knew nothing about being in a relationship. And honestly, now that I'm older, like I knew that it wouldn't have worked out. Like I'm not a high school sweetheart material. Yeah, baby me was just a delusional romantic,
That is too good and so relatable. I feel like especially in middle school and in high school, honestly. I feel like something Taylor wrote about so much on Fearless and Speak Now too is the idea of fairy tale love.
Yes.
And I think fairy tales are where we're first exposed to ideas about love and relationships. I think we pick up on the dream of having a soulmate or someone who's perfect for us, who's going to love us for the person we are. Love Story, especially when you take the images she gives us in the music video, is very much Prince Charming coming to save her. But she uses Romeo and Juliet as the examples. And people in that story don't want them together, but their love transcends what other people think. And I think Taylor uses this Romeo and Juliet idea to bolster her argument that the relationship she's writing about in Love Story is destiny and that Prince Charming will save her from her problems.
Run away together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Taylor's just convinced that love has to feel larger than life and that nothing can stop true love. But in Romeo and Juliet, fate has the final say. And just because their love feels so strong, it doesn't mean that it's going to last forever. And it takes a few relationships and heartbreaks to learn that fairy tales aren't reality, and love and relationships does not work perfectly or save us from our problems.
Right. And even on Fearless, I think she's learning this. She writes songs like Breathe and Forever and Always, where she's experiencing what it's like when the hopes and dreams created by fairy tales are met with reality. And I think there's an element of growing up too that makes you question, much like we did, are soulmates a thing, or is it just a fairy tale concept that's not actually real?
Right. I mean, fairy tale endings are always when the couple gets together and we just assume happily ever after, but we don't ever really get an example of what being with someone looks like.
Totally. And then as we move on to her Speak Now album more fully, as Taylor's transitioning from teenager to young adult, I think we see a little growth in some ways, but also she's not ready to totally give up the fairy tale stuff, which again, relatable. In the song Speak Now, much like in You Belong With Me, she's so sure that this person and her are supposed to be together that she's going to interrupt their wedding. And I think this really shows that she is of the mindset that there is only one right person for everybody. So the stakes are
Yeah.
really high for her when this person is about to marry someone else.
Right. Like, it's so hard to let go of a broken relationship when you're convinced that there's no one else for you. I also think of Story of Us and how that's a story of fate turned tragedy, where there's a strong connection between two people, but then she writes, I don't know what to say since the twist of fate when it all broke down, which is a recognition that just because something is fated doesn't always mean that it'll have the fairy tale ending that they want it to.
Yeah, we're starting to see that growth there. She always thinks it's going to work out in the beginning, and then we see almost like a loss of innocence as she
Ooh.
realizes fate doesn't always bring a happy ending.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's a total loss of innocence. And I think that loss of innocence changes you. So moving on from that, we really see a change in her next album, Red.
Yes, there is a huge shift when we move on to Red. Taylor is moving from being a teenager into young adulthood. Now it seems like Taylor almost expects things to go wrong.
Yeah.
As she's searching for her soulmate, and she's starting to learn how to enjoy the chaos, which is really quite beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Literally, the first song in her album is State of Grace. And what I really picked up on is the line, we learn to live with the pain, Mosaic, broken hearts. And here's our puzzle piece theme. Like in All Too Well, she mentioned autumn leaves falling like pieces into place, which this reminds me of this idea of soulmate, fate, destiny, right? Like twin flames, like joining together, like things are right. But here, instead of grace, it's talking about how even broken hearts can be pieced back together in a mosaic. And this just shows that she still is a romantic and still believes that there's hope for a great love, even after the losses.
Yes, and we'll see this puzzle piece theme in more songs in the future. But in State of Grace, she talks about her and this person being twin fire signs, which gives me twin flames, soulmate energy. But I think she's just making a reference to their astrological signs and being passionate, fiery, and impulsive fire signs. But yeah, with the Mosaic broken hearts, it's like she's not really afraid of the passion anymore because she knows she can heal from a heartbreak. She literally says, this is a state of grace. This is the worthwhile fight. Love is a ruthless game unless you play it good and right. These are the hands of fate. You're my Achilles heel. This is the golden age of something good and right and real. Ooh.
Yeah, her heart is so persistent. It's unbelievable. She's such a romantic, and after all of her heartbreaks, she still believes in love. State of Grace is an anthem about believing in love no matter where it leads you. She's saying love is worth the fight, even if it's a ruthless game. There's still the hands of fate, even when she has a hunch that this person is her Achilles heel or like her weakness, you know? Knowing that it could end with her death. It's still the golden age of something good and right and real.
Yeah. There's so many good examples on Red, the album, to bring into this topic. But for time's sake, I am only going to share two of my most favorite lyrics Taylor has ever written. The first one, I love and treacherous, when she's at the beginning of a relationship. She says, I can't decide if it's a choice getting swept away. Which kind of fits into this idea that we don't have control over who we fall for. It could just be our fate or destiny to have an experience with someone, even if it doesn't work out in the end. And there's a sense of danger and risk in that. Then in All Too Well 10-minute version, she's on the other side of a relationship that didn't work out. And she writes, did the twin flame bruise paint you blue? Just between us, did the love affair maim you too? Which is so haunting. And I think she's saying, the experience of thinking you were my twin flame has left me bruised and broken and in pain.
Right, and I think we see her shift again after that in 1989, where she's maybe like numb from all of the heartbreak that she writes about in Red, and becomes more experimental and cynical about love in 1989. It feels to me like a revolt against these supernatural romantic ideas of love, like destiny, you know, whatever that we just talked about. Like she says in Blank Space, you look like my next mistake, love's a game, wanna play? Or, you know, so it's gonna be forever. forever or it's gonna go down in flames. Yeah, she just is convinced that love doesn't last at this point.
Yeah, in Wildest Dreams, too, she says, "Heaven can't help me now. Nothing lasts
Yeah.
forever." And in Wonderland, she sings, "We found Wonderland. You and I got lost in it. We pretended it could last forever."
Right. And I think New Romantic is an observation of romantic relationship, and I think it's a sarcastic take on it, where she sings stuff like "Heartbreak is the national anthem," or like "Please leave me stranded." It's so romantic. It's just like she's over it, you know?
Yes, to me, that song also reflects more of a modern view of how romance and dating have changed with time and even with the introduction of technology. People used to meet just through friends of friends or randomly in different public places as strangers,
Yeah.
which is much more romantic and fetish, if you will, than meeting, like on an app or social media or something.
Right.
And I think all the songs we've just pointed to on 1989 kind of show that Taylor seems to be dating for fun now.
Yes.
Not just to find someone she wants to marry. She's putting less pressure on her relationships in that way.
Right. It's a completely different approach to relationship that doesn't focus on fate or destiny or like being with someone forever. Yeah, moving on to Reputation, I feel like there's another evolution from 1989 where she talks about love as if she's in control of it now. I think Reputation is such a wild mix of recklessness but also a weird resurgence of romanticism.
Yes, to all of that.
Yeah.
The first thing I think of in Getaway Car, she's saying to someone, "Why did you think this was going to work out? It obviously started off in a bad place. Like, what were you
Right.
thinking?" Then she drops the line, "Don't blame me. Love made me crazy. If it doesn't, you ain't doing it right. And don't blame me."
Right.
And then on the other hand, we get lyrics like, "And all at once you are the one I have been waiting
Yeah.
for, king of my heart, body, and soul." And king of my heart.
Whoa.
So
Yeah.
she does still believe in deep connection and true love, it seems.
Totally. We see another puzzle piece theme here too in So It Goes, where she says, "And all the pieces fall right into place," which makes me think that she still believes in this idea of a soulmate or like twin flame.
Gosh, you're right. Yeah. I feel like we also have to mention then the line in Call It What You Want, where she says to her partner, "You don't need to save me, but would you run away with me?"
Yeah.
Which is almost like a grown up version of Love Story. Because she
Yes.
doesn't need Romeo to save her anymore, but she would
Right.
just like the companionship of running away with someone.
Yeah, and this theme continue into Lover, which is a very flowery, romantic album that celebrates the beauty of finding a partner that you could see forever with. It's like her version of a fairy tale ending, you know? She mentioned meeting someone and feeling the soulmate connection. Like I mentioned before, the line, "Have I loved you 20 seconds or 20 years?" And even going to saying, "I've loved you 3 summers now, but I want them all."
Yes. There's quite a bit of fate and recognitions of signs that are mentioned on Lover. We have, of course, Cruel Summer, which she talks about how sneaking around to see this person sealed her fate or her falling in love and starting a more serious relationship.
Yeah.
And then in Cornelia Street, she talks about the streetlights acting as a sign leading her and this person to a shared home together. Like the streetlights are illuminating their path forward together.
Right. And then All the Girls You Loved Before, she said, "Your past and mine are parallel lines, stars all aligned and they intertwine." It's just saying that these past relationships have led them to each other.
Yeah, and she gives examples of specific things that made them perfect for each other.
Right. Like all the signs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think she picks up this idea really strongly again on Folklore in the song Invisible String, which is probably where Taylor most overtly discusses fate and destiny. And on the surface, the song can be interpreted as kind of flowery and idealistic, her reverting back to a kind of fairy tale understanding of love. But I think it's more about healing broken parts of yourself and finding love or even meaning around the difficult things that you've gone through. One of my favorite lines is, "Time, mystical time, cutting me open, then healing me fine. were there clues I didn't see. Invisible String is one of my favorite songs of hers ever because I think it just so beautifully captures this idea that everything you go through perfectly shapes you into the person you are today. You wouldn't be who you are if you didn't go through those certain hard things. And I think that's kind of the grown-up understanding of fate and destiny in terms of romantic relationships, right? It's not everything is perfect, but despite the pain and imperfections of life and relationships, there still can be this incredible beauty. And it's almost because of the hard stuff that you've gone through in the past. And we can also, of course, relate the string and time metaphor to the Greek myth about the fates we talked about earlier. And then also just a little fun fact, there's a Chinese folktale about this red string of fate. That is basically this idea that people who are destined to marry are tied together by an invisible red string, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And I think it's interesting that on the same album, she talks about finding her soulmate through that invisible string. But she also talks about on the flip side of that, where someone else you love isn't the person you're going to end up with. And I totally relate to the song The One, where Taylor talked about wishing she would have ended up with one person, but they didn't end up together. It seems like she's looking at this relationship in hindsight. For me, I can look at my childhood situationship now, and it wasn't the painful and life-altering experience that I thought it was. And in The One, when Taylor says, you know, the greatest loves of all time are over now, I think of how I was able to recognize the depth and gravity of emotions I was able to feel at that time. And even if it didn't work out the way that I hoped it would, I now know something about myself that I didn't before. So like I can feel that much and that deep. But also the attitude of it would have been fun if you would have been the one. It's just accepting the good and bad and knowing that we'll be okay at the end of the day and it's not the end of the world. And we learn something from those experiences.
Right. Because, like, when you're in it, the feeling of losing the one can be so depressing and painful. But it's really interesting in this song, she kind of contrasts the lyrical content, like the heaviness of it, with this very upbeat and fun music, which I think kind of shows a more mature understanding of love and life and loss, where you don't necessarily spend the rest of your life with your soulmate. That's an idea I think a lot of people come to take on. And I think this song really shows she's accepted her fate of not ending up with this person that she had this amazing connection to. Right. Even though in the song she's kind of questioning it, or she dreams about what could have been still.
Yeah, like I think she wrestles with the idea of who has agency over her destiny. In Invisible String, she talks about all the things that led her to someone, and she doesn't really have control over those events that led her there. She didn't even see the clues along the way, she said. Then we get to the album Midnights, and in the song Mastermind, she talks about taking control of her fate in some capacity. The song tells the story, once upon a time, the planets and the fates and all the stars align. You and I ended up in the same room at the same time. And then she goes into saying, what if I told you none of it was accidental? And the first night that you saw me, nothing was gonna stop me. It's her talking about the fate bringing them together. But once that happened, she knew she wanted him, and she's taking control of her destiny, not leaving it to chance. And I think that we all do that in some level when we have a crush. I remember always thinking about the next time I want to see that person and try to make plans to be where they would be. And like, I think it's a fun feeling to scheme, you know?
Yeah. And it's totally taking kind of control of destiny, being like, I'm going to make this happen. And then in the song, she's putting all this work in too, because in the bridge, she reveals, no one wanted to play with me as a little kid, so I've been scheming like a criminal ever since to make them love me. Right. But then the whole twist of the song is that she finds out that this person has realized she's been doing this the entire time, like doing this scheming stuff. And they've just actually wanted to be with her because they genuinely love her. Because after all the planets and the fates and all the stars align to bring them together.
Right. And I think that ideally, if you're really interested in someone, they should also be putting the same amount of work to be around you. So I think Taylor once again nuanced this naive understanding that fate and destiny is something that just happens to you, and your relationship just magically works out perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think she sees relationships as a good mix of fate bringing you together, and maybe the feeling of meeting a soulmate is what pulls you to them, but it's still up to you to do the work.
Yes, you could be a good match with someone, but there's still work you have to put in after this happily ever after, you know?
For sure. And I think in the Tortured Poets department, we get to see this tragic side of fate bringing people together, but one person might not be able to handle the work that needs to go into making this relationship good. We get the song My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys, where she says, "'Cause it fits too right, puzzle pieces in the dead of night," where she sees the significance of this relationship fitting together and coming together, but obviously the person doesn't have his shit together, and
Ugh.
it ends tragically.
So true, so true. And Down Bad too, she says, "For a moment I knew cosmic love," which
Mm-hmm.
is cosmic love is just defined as love fated or destined between two people. And
Right.
she also says she feels like she lost her twin, which I think is kind
Mm-hmm.
of akin to like a twin flame. And I'm also obsessed with But Daddy, I Love Him being the grown up
Yes.
version of Love Story.
Yes.
So she kind of talks about judgmental creeps
Mm-hmm.
in But Daddy, I Love Him,
Mm-hmm.
thinking it can change the beat of my heart when he touches me and counteract the chemistry and undo the
Mm-hmm.
destiny. So in this song, she's saying it's her choice to be with this person, even though she knows he's a little crazy. But in Love Story, she's sneaking around trying to avoid the judgment and control of her
Mm-hmm.
parents, specifically her
Mm-hmm.
dad. And now she just doesn't give a rat's ass about what everyone thinks.
Right.
She's like, y'all are judgmental as hell.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of the lyrics in Love Story. I sneak out to the garden to see you. We keep quiet because we're dead if they knew. And my daddy said, stay away from Juliet. But then now on the opposite side in But Daddy, I Love Him, she's running with her dress unbuttoned, screaming, But Daddy, I love him,
Mm-hmm.
and like faking a pregnancy.
Yeah, it is. I just love the parallel and like the dad imagery is so strong
Yeah,
in those two
for
songs, you
sure.
know? Yeah. Okay. So, in true Taylor fashion, let's now dive to the depths of depression and talk about
Mm-hmm.
LOML or Loss of My
Mm-hmm.
Life, which I think can be seen as the flip side of But Daddy, I Love Him. When the destined relationship kind of falls apart, she's hurting because she talks about feeling uniquely
Mm-hmm.
aglow with this person. But in the end, it doesn't mean that they really were destined to be together
Mm-hmm.
forever. She says, "Who's going to tell me the truth when you blew in with the winds of fate and told me I reformed
Mm-hmm.
you?" And she goes on to talk about the love she thought she shared with this person turns out to be fake. And then she says, "What we thought was for all time was
Mm.
momentary."
Yeah, like she experienced so much loss from the relationship she thought would last forever.
Mm-hmm.
I see in the song The Prophecy, which I'm hoping that we'll be able to do a whole episode on that at some point.
Yeah, we need to. We
Yeah.
need to.
But here, she's coming from a place of desperation almost. The line that just gets me every time when she says, I guess a lesser woman would have lost hope. A greater woman
Hmm.
wouldn't beg. But I look at the sky and said, please, I've been on my knees, change the prophecy. Don't want money, just someone who wants my company. Let it once be me.
Mm-hmm.
That
Ugh.
kills me. She's just over all these heartbreaks and she still wholeheartedly wants the love of a soulmate, and she's given up on her approach of taking control of her destiny. She's done everything, right? And she's just now begging someone
Mm-hmm.
something to change
Mm-hmm.
whatever was prophesied over her that's causing all these heartbreaks, which I feel like prophecy, destiny, and fate, all of these are interchangeable, right? It's just like something out there.
For sure. Yeah, the song just like hurts me so
Mm-hmm.
much. And it's so crazy that she draws our attention directly to fate and soulmates. She says, "I'm so afraid I sealed my
Mm-hmm.
fate. No sign of
Yeah.
soulmates." So I think these ideas are still very alive for her on some level. She's still trying to figure out their role in her life. But I totally agree. She is struggling with like her lack of
Mm-hmm.
agency or control and trying to understand why she's not able to find someone to
Mm-hmm.
be with. You know, she just wants the
Yeah.
company. She's saying, on one hand, my fate or this prophecy, whatever, has brought me so much success and money, but that could be what's keeping me from finding my soulmate. She's in a really unique position.
Yeah.
But, oh, there's so much we could talk about with this one.
Yeah. But that's kind of where she leaves us untortured poets.
She's like come a long way in how she understands love. Looking back at all we've covered, we started with her as a kid and teenager. She's learning about the downsides of relying on signs and her being in her fairy tale era where she is wanting someone to save her, that soulmate who perfectly completes her. And then she's also learning that fate doesn't always have a happy ending.
Yeah, and like in her young adulthood, after experiencing some heartbreak, she still believes that her shattered heart can be mended by the right person, and that love is glorious and it's worth fighting for. And then we see the shift away from that glorification of love in 1989, where she's taking love less seriously and not concerned with finding a soulmate and just having fun experimenting with love and relationship.
And then we hit Reputation, and she's kind of surprised when she does seem to find someone who's a good match for her, but she still brings with her that more mature perspective that no one's going to save her. She recognizes it would just be nice to have someone to go through the ups and downs of life with.
Yeah, and then in Lover and Folklore, she once again was able to recognize the magical parts of love and how two people's stories can come together so beautifully despite the pain and heartbreaks that they've been through.
And going back to Mastermind, we see that fate and destiny might play a part in bringing people together, but both people kind of have to work to make the relationship successful and beneficial to each other. And then in the Tortured Poets department, we see more heartbreak paired with the hope of trying again and remaining open to an evolving understanding of love.
Yeah, I'm reminded of that idea of Mosaic broken heart, where we're so capable of breaking and rebuilding over and over, and we can hold on to parts of our younger beliefs and combine them with this constant nuances as we grow older. And I think that's what coming of age is.
Absolutely. And just kind of thinking about my own journey and how I view soulmates now, I have to admit there is still a part of me that believes in soulmates, I think. Or at least I think the concept does speak to something that holds true for me. Because, I don't know, there's something about my husband and I's relationship that just seems really magical, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, I totally felt this pull to him, and I could not have imagined someone that would have been as perfect of a partner to me, specifically me, before I met him. You know, he like exceeded all my expectations of what was possible in a partner. And I think the beautiful humanness of any relationship is that it still takes work, you know? Sometimes like that relationship is the most difficult thing that you have to navigate, but it's, I don't know, at the same time, there's like so many magical parts of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's what's missing from the fairy tale is that perfect doesn't mean it doesn't take work, you know? And personally, I don't know if I believe in soulmate as my other half that will complete me like I once did before. But because of my partner now, I know that if the puzzle pieces really fit, then you don't have to sit there and wonder if it does. Which was so, you know, it's so different from my other experiences with love, is that I spent so much time wondering if I'm loved or if I'm worth that other person's time.
Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you found that love.
Thanks.
I feel like this episode has just reminded me of how amazing it is that we've gotten to grown up alongside Taylor, and how our understanding of love and relationships have grown alongside hers, you know? And I'm continually amazed at her ability to write about such vulnerable feelings, because I think we can all relate to so much of her experience because it's just the human experience, you know? And this girl has gotten her heart broken so many times, and she still just like runs full force into love when a new opportunity presents itself.
Exactly. I think what I learned most from her is that it's okay to let go of some things and hold on to some, and that it's okay to take time to decide what those things are, and it's okay to be unsure while you're processing those. And like, man, she ran into something that's so true in her experience with love that even the multitude of heartbreaks can't deter her from so believing in it. And I think that's so brave and courageous. Like, I really admire that.
Yeah. Ugh, she's such an inspiration. I just
Yeah.
I can't believe it sometimes. And then I think about, like, as we continue to grow and age, what are all the other revelations we're going to have about love
Yes.
and relationships? And then I'm so excited because Taylor is also going to keep growing and
Yes.
changing. And I know that she's going to capture that in her art.
Yeah, and I just love her. And I love this. And I
I
love
know. Yeah.
having someone else to like process this with too. This has been so
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yeah.
This is all we have for this episode, but stay tuned for what we have next.
Mm-hmm.
Like and subscribe to the podcast on your preferred platform, and do give us
Mm-hmm.
a rating if you like what you hear. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll see you back here again for the next episode.
Thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate it. It means so much to us. So we hope to see you back again. Bye.
Bye.
Great.
Okay.
Are we calling that good?